Hey guys, in this video, I'll tell you my opinion on President-elect Joe Biden's plans for the housing market, how it really does not address the problem, or I think does not even try to solve it. And I'll tell you why I'm officially sounding the alarm on this whole housing market crash. Hey guys, if you're new to the channel, my name is Mac Rogers. I'm a real estate broker here in the East Bay, in the San Francisco Bay Area, so welcome. So let's get into it. Before you can solve a problem, you have to identify the problem or the problems, right? The problem with the housing market right now is inventory. On the Biden website, they acknowledge this. Quote, Americans lack access to affordable and quality housing, unquote. Now, this is great. We're on the right track. Then it all starts to go downhill for me. It then says, communities of color are disproportionately impacted by the failures in our housing markets, with home ownership rates for Black and Latino individuals falling far below the rate for white individuals, unquote. Okay, what failure is this? Why did it all of a sudden jump into a race thing? Now, if people can see through this, then your problem is just not housing. But let's continue. It goes on to say Joe Biden will invest $640 billion over 10 years. Now, first of all, I don't think Joe Biden has $640 billion. Hunter maybe. Okay, I kid. So he's not investing squat, okay? It's the American people's money. Second, what's with this 10 years number? It's purely political. They're basically saying that we can't accomplish everything in 8 years, so we need 10. After my second term, if he gets reelected and still alive, you have to vote Democrat again in order for us to finish the job. Now, during the campaign, housing was not really a hot topic for both candidates. Both of them were talking about the virus that, that's causing havoc on our economy right now. And rightfully so. Everyone's affected by this, economically, emotionally, physically, and financially. It's really taking its toll. Now, you can go to joebiden.com/housing to see the whole plan or campaign promise. So I think no one really bothered, or no one really cared about the housing market during the campaign. Maybe it's because housing, it's really hot right now, and you have amazing rates and prices just keep going up with huge demand. Only the people that can't afford it are the ones that are affected. The plan is long, and I'm not going to go over the whole thing for this video. It will just take forever. I'll highlight a couple of them that to me seems well-meaning, but it's totally without teeth, or again, I believe it's not gonna happen. Here's what they call the Biden principles for housing. First, affordable. Quote, taking up no more than 30% of the income so they have money left over to meet other needs, unquote. Now, this is good. Affordable is always good, right? But why tell someone that you can only spend 30% of your income? Right now, in order to qualify for a loan, a good debt-to-income ratio, which is what the 30% represent, it's around 43% right now. We call that the DTI. This is what a majority of the lenders use. There are other types of programs with different DTIs, but let's stick with this one for this video. The big question is, will they make this into a law? Will they push all the lenders to adopt this? This would actually lessen the number of people that can qualify for a loan, because now you've raised the bar. Maybe it's a good thing, because now to get a house, the qualification becomes tougher. But if your goal is to make home ownership available to everyone, this is not the answer. Plus, there are a lot of other factors to consider when qualifying for a home. Will that be taken into account? And what is this quote, meet other needs? To me, this is one of those principles that just sounds good and just makes everyone go, yeah! But really, it's nothing. The second principle has something to do with stability. Quote, providing families with the consistency they need to maintain jobs, perform well in school, and develop social networks necessary for well-being, unquote. Now, I'm at a total loss with this one. My guess is what they're trying to say here is that if you own your home, you maintain your job, perform well in school, or your kids perform well in school, and you develop social networks necessary for well-being. Maybe that means you get popular. Kind of a tall order, don't you think? Imagine me telling a buyer or you that, hey, once you buy this house, you will be doing well in your job, your kids will do great in school, and by the way, you will be popular in your social network. Again, this sounds good on paper, or in this case, the computer screen, but a whole lot of nothing again. Here's the third one. It also sounds great. Safe and healthy is principle number 3. Quote, protecting families from environmental and social risk, from polluted air to lead contamination to gun violence. Oh my God, how does this solve the inventory crisis? I'm all for clean air, clean water, and security. But what is this? This just sounds good on paper again. I don't have anything else to say about this. Let's just move on. Fourth principle is accessible, meeting the needs of individuals with disabilities so they can live in their communities. Now, I don't have a problem with this. I think we need to help those that are definitely in need. But again, how does this solve the problem? Next, principle number 5 in the Biden plan. This totally just blew my top off. Energy efficient and resilient, reducing our greenhouse gas emissions and withstanding the impacts of climate change. What is this? How can reducing greenhouse gas emissions and withstanding the impact of climate change help housing? Maybe for the homeless people, I don't know. A whole lot of nothing again. Let's move on. Finally, the last principle is located near good schools and with reasonable commute to their jobs. Again, this sounds absolutely great. And isn't this what most home buyers are looking for? How is this helping solve the problem? Okay, let's go through the rest of them. The next one is a big one. End redlining and other discriminatory and unfair practices in the housing market. Okay, let me begin by saying that I do believe that there is discrimination that goes on and that generally there are bad people, whether bad at their jobs or just absolutely treating people bad. Okay, that's a given. But this suggests that there is rampant redlining or discriminatory practices going on. For those that don't know what redlining means, it's refusing to make a loan to someone because they live in an area deemed to be a poor financial risk. Now, isn't that more of good business sense? The plan also talked about a new homeowners and renters Bill of Rights modeled on the California Homeowner Bill of Rights. Oh boy, God help us, our entire country. It's going to turn into a big California homeless encampment. Let's break this down piece by piece and see if it's helpful. Quote, this new Bill of Rights will prevent mortgage brokers from leading borrowers into loans that cost more than appropriate, unquote. So let's stop here for a second. What I don't like about this part is that it makes it sound like mortgage brokers are giving out, or in this case, leading borrowers into loans that are basically higher cost or not good for them. In my experience over the last decade here in the Bay Area, I have not seen this at all. Before the market crash, I can say that getting a loan was kind of a buyer beware kind of a thing. You have to shop around and make sure you are getting the cheapest loan. But overall, I think this is good. If we can mandate that when you get a loan, you should be offered the best that you qualify for. I think this goes for any kind of loan. Okay, let's continue to the next part. Quote, prevent mortgage servicers from advancing a foreclosure when the homeowner is in the process of receiving a loan modification. Give homeowners a private right of action to seek financial redress from mortgage lenders and servicers that violate these protections, and give borrowers the right to a timely notification on the status of their loan modifications and be able to appeal modification denials. Okay, this absolutely sounds fantastic. However, if it's anything like what was done in the past, this has no teeth or no power at all. Let me explain by giving an example from the last housing crisis. Then President Bush enacted the Home Affordable Modification Program to help homeowners avoid foreclosure. It sounded great and really just gave false hope to a lot of struggling homeowners. First off, it didn't really require the lenders to work with the homeowners. It was kind of a government suggestion. Not only that, it also didn't give the lenders any plan on what to do with these struggling homeowners. What were the lenders going to do? Just tell the homeowners, hey, here you go, free housing. In order for this to be effective, it has to become a law or a mandate that the lenders, they have to abide by this. Lenders should also be compensated or at least be given a plan on how they can implement this so-called foreclosure prevention program. It also talked about, quote, right to a timely notification of their loan modification to be able to appeal modification denials. Now, this is absolutely a must. Again, during the housing crisis, I was doing a lot of loss mitigation. And let me tell you, waiting on an answer from a lender would take at least 6 months. And that was considered fast. Normally, it would take you at least 1 year to get a response, and the answer would be an automatic no with no other recourse. The banks need to be able to give timely response, no more than 3 months or 90 days, and also be able to give you alternatives. Okay, let's move on. The next one, quote, building on the Obama-Biden administration's Protecting Tenants at Foreclosure Act. The Bill of Rights will also expand protection for renters. For example, the Bill of Rights will include a law prohibiting landlords from discriminating against renters receiving federal housing benefits, unquote. Now, this again is good because this does happen. People that are getting housing assistance often get denied or don't even get the opportunity to see places that don't accept housing vouchers. Although I think this will change in the coming years when we see a wave of rental properties sitting vacant and landlords struggle to rent this out. And yes, I think it's coming. Now let's continue, and this one I call total BS on this, and I think it's just one of those feel-good promises again. Quote, protect tenants from eviction. Housing evictions can have devastating consequences for families and often stem from relatively small shortfalls in rent, unquote. So let's stop here for a moment. Relatively small shortfalls. What does this mean? 1 month, 2 months, 3 months? This seems to suggest that evictions are often not warranted. Let's move on to the next part. Quote, as a former public defender, Biden appreciates the difference legal representation can make for those facing eviction. As president, he will work to enact Majority Whip James Clyburn and Senator Michael Bennett's Legal Assistance to Prevent Evictions Act of 2020, which will help tenants facing eviction access to legal assistance. He will also encourage localities to create eviction diversion programs, including mediation, payment plans, and financial literacy education programs, unquote. I do get the part of protecting tenants' rights, but what about landlords? I mean, what do they get? How are they protected? Think about this. If you were a landlord and I was your tenant, and I haven't been paying you rent for whatever, 2-3 months, because I lost my job, and you were told, hey, you can't evict Mac, what's in it for you? How do you get compensated? You still have expenses, right? I mean, you most likely still have a mortgage. This is why I say this is all feel-good promise. Because the reality is, if you were a renter and can't pay, you will get evicted. There's no law that says you are protected from non-payment. I won't cover the last part of this, which says financial literacy education programs. To me, it's just some sprinkling of nice buzzwords. Now let's move on. Quote, eliminate local and state housing regulations that perpetuate discrimination. Exclusionary zoning has for decades been strategically used to keep people of color and low-income families out of certain communities. As president, Biden will enact legislation requiring any state receiving federal dollars through the Community Development Block Grants or Surface Transportation Block Grants to develop a strategy for inclusionary zoning as proposed in the Home Act of 2019 by Majority Whip Clyburn and Senator Cory Booker. Biden will also invest $300 million in local housing policy grants to give states and localities the technical assistance and planning support they need to eliminate exclusionary zoning policies and other local regulations that contribute to sprawl. I don't really know what this is. To me, it sounds like redistricting. Not really sure, so it's hard for me to comment on this. The only thing that I can say is that if there's really this thing happening, the part where it says exclusionary zoning has for decades been strategically used to keep people of color and low-income families out of certain communities, I bet you all the lawyers in this nation would have been all over it, suing anything and anyone to change this. If you have any thoughts on this, let me know in the comment section below. Now let's move on. Hold financial institutions accountable for discriminatory practices in the housing market. The Obama-Biden administration held major national financial institutions accountable for discriminatory lending practices, securing hundreds of millions of dollars in settlements to help borrowers who had been harmed by their practices. And in 2013, the Obama-Biden administration codified a long-standing court-supported view that lending practices that have a discriminatory effect can be challenged even if discrimination was not explicit. But now the Trump administration is seeking to gut this disparate impact standard by significantly increasing the burden of proof for those claiming discrimination. In the Biden administration, this change will be reversed to ensure financial institutions are held accountable for serving all customers. I think this part is good. Hopefully, if this really gets enacted, the lobbyists won't be able to water this down. And I would like to see how those people that were affected also directly get to benefit from it. Normally, the banks will pay, and there's this pool of money that we are just told gets allocated everywhere. So let's move on. I'm going to skip other parts of this promise and jump to this part. Tackle racial bias that leads to homes in communities of color being assessed by appraisers below their fair value. Housing in communities primarily composed of people of color is valued at tens of thousands of dollars below majority white communities, even when all other factors are the same, contributing to the racial wealth gap. Whoa, let's stop here for a moment. You know, I don't see this in the Bay Area. I don't know the rest of the country, so I can't speak for that. Let me tell you why communities where there's lots of people of color, their home values are low. And it's fairly simple. It's because it looks like crap, it's filthy, it's run down, and dare I say, it's ghetto-ish. It doesn't have anything to do with the people of color. It's more to do with financial, or let's just call it what it is. Poor people. Union City, Hayward, Daly City, Fremont. This is just a short list of cities that has a lot of people of color, and in fact, you can go into certain neighborhoods that there's no white people living there, and their home values are through the roof. Let's continue to the next part, which would be a total overreach. It says, to counteract this racial bias, Biden will establish a national standard for housing appraisals that ensures appraisers have adequate training and a full appreciation for the neighborhoods and do not hold implicit biases because of lack of community understanding. An objective national standard for appraisals will also make it harder for financial institutions to put pressure on appraisers to their benefit." Unquote. Really? Look, there's no such thing as a national real estate market. Real estate is very local, and in fact, even down to being, down to the neighborhood, being neighborhood specific. Think about it. When you're thinking of buying a home, you look at a city and then you drill down on a specific neighborhood or neighborhoods. Now, why is this? Because there is something specific in those neighborhoods that you are attracted to that you don't find anywhere else. To put a national standard and hold appraisers to it would be a total nightmare and a huge mess. You're lumping everything together. Look, there's a lot to cover in the Biden plan, and I will leave that up to you to read. There's a lot of good intentions and well-meaning behind it, but the bottom line for me is that it just kind of meanders, goes around the problem, underneath the problem that was stated in the beginning, and that is the lack of affordable housing. It seems like there's a lot of band-aid solutions to this. It's not a real fix. So here's my solution. Open up all those lands that we have available for development. And then there's a lot of land here. There's a lot of land here in the Bay Area. Don't hamper the developers with all these environmental BS. Not saying not to protect the environment, but let's be realistic. I mean, paying millions of dollars to move owls or frogs? It's ridiculous. You can get kids to take those frogs away. Usually the people that are creating all these hoopla are the ones that don't need affordable housing and sitting atop of their pedestal saying, "We need affordable housing." Oh, but not close to me. I need all those open space to breathe. Give me a break. Here's another part of my solution. Those military bases that we have here in the Bay Area that's not being used? You want to build affordable housing? Let's get all socialist on this thing. Why not build in these places? What you can do is you can give 25% to the people that serve the city first, your police, your teachers, your firefighters, and then another 25% to the county employees, and then another 25% for low cost or subsidized housing, and then the 25% open it up to everyone. We have Moffett Field in the Mid-Peninsula that's a huge tract of land that if you open that sucker up and build affordable housing, that would tremendously help. You also have the Alameda Naval Air Base in the East Bay. That's the same thing. There's also the base in Concord or even the one in Dublin. These are huge tracts of land, can be used for affordable housing. But guess what? It won't happen. You'll hear so many excuses how it needs to be cleaned up or it's gonna take billions of dollars to convert. The reality is that there is no political will to do it. Just take a look at Alameda Naval Air Base. That was closed back in 1997. That's over 20 years ago. What did they have to show for it? Not a lot. Certainly nothing in the form of affordable housing. Why? Because there's no money to be made in affordable housing. $1 million townhomes, that's what's being developed over there. Look, the problem is not homebuyer incentives or interest rates. Those are all good, but it does nothing if you can't afford to buy. So open up all this land, drop all this environmental BS, and I'm not advocating just to build. Build with a purpose. Build self-sustaining new 21st century neighborhoods, especially in these government-owned lands. But it's probably never going to happen because, again, lack of political will. Whether it's Republicans or Democrats controlling the government, it's the same thing. The solution really is go make a lot of money so you can afford to buy a home. And finally, here's why I think we really are headed for a big collapse. The president-elect said we are going to another 4 to 6 weeks of lockdown. That most likely means longer than that. Remember when this started? it was supposed to be only 3 weeks. Look, we can no longer ignore the millions of Americans that has been unemployed this past several months. We can no longer, ignore all the countless number of businesses going out of business. Think about this. As of the recording of this video, there were 25 million Americans out of a job. Yelp also said that they believe that, or they think that 64% of the businesses that were in Yelp that are out of Yelp now won't ever come back. That's hundreds and thousands of businesses. If you watched my video on what will take this housing market down, I said it there and I will say it again here. It's the economy. If the economy goes, the housing market is the least of our problems. This could be indeed far worse than the housing crisis that we had, because this time around, it won't just be housing that will get hit. Another lockdown will totally push us to the brink. Hey, on that note, see you on my next video. I'll talk about FHA loans and why it's crap here in the Bay Area at least.